What is up, guys? Jackie here. Today I get to share my testimony with all of you lovely people. I believe there's power in our testimonies. It actually took someone sharing their testimony 8 years ago in high school about what God had done in their life. And that led to an encounter with God for the first time. And that was the first time I had ever encountered God and the first time I'd ever heard about who God was. And growing up, I never really had a personal relationship with God. I didn't know anything about who God was. So I then had identity issues, and I remember just being so broken, so lost, and so insecure, and trying to find my worth in things that weren't filling me up, or they would have filled me up temporarily, but it didn't last. And so I would always go back to those things, whether it be guys, whether it be friends, whether it be like just the things that the world had offered to me, or getting into things that I shouldn't have, watching things that I probably shouldn't have as well. And so that left me a lot more empty, and I didn't know how to express what I was going through. Mainly because I had identity issues. During that time, I had experienced both my parents divorced, and this happened through social media, which is crazy to think about. That came out of nowhere, and I found out through social media. And so I was constantly comparing my family to other families and seeing just how broken we were at that time. And I always thought that everyone had it better at their homes, and that I was the only one going through life when that was not the case. I remember then being put in that school and just encountering God for the first time during a chapel service. And I remember the chaplain actually speaking about who God was, which I knew nothing about. But at that point in my life, I needed to hear that. And so I was hearing everything that I needed to hear at that moment. It was very, very timely. And I believe God used that moment, of course. I actually remember that day I was just over life. I was depressed. I would get into things that I shouldn't have and would regret doing these things because I was acting out of my emotions, and I'd closed my heart up to people and just everyone else around me. And so I remember that day just being like, God, if you're real, then you're going to have to show up, because I might as well just end my life, right? And so I was actually planning on doing so that day, but God. And so on his testimony and how God had showed up for him, and he'd asked if he wanted to stay back after that, and I had stayed back, of course. And so I remember staying back and just feeling the presence of God so powerfully, and just feeling at home and at ease and feeling such peace. And from that day on, I've been in a relationship with God. Of course, life still happens. Being a Christian does not make you prone to life, and walking in your calling doesn't make you prone to life. Doing what God's called you to do doesn't make you prone to life. Life is still going to happen, but you get to endure in each and every season, and you get to become more like Christ. And that's really what we're called to be, more like Christ, being less of ourselves and more like him. Of course, that doesn't mean being perfect, but it's always a progression to that point. And so that's my testimony. I love you guys. You guys are awesome. If you have any testimonies to share, definitely share them. There's power in your testimony. I wouldn't be here if someone hadn't shared their testimony about what God had done in their life, honestly. So yeah, that's my testimony. Bye, guys.